Okay. So you want to first of all make up your mind on what kind of logo design would suit your brand. So if your brand is going to have lots of printed materials, if the logo has a high chance of being printed in a very small dimension, flat logo designs are extremely suited for those purposes. If your application is not going to have that much of a printed presence, it's going to be mostly seen on the screen, it needs to convey as much artistic expression as possible, then three-dimensional logo designs are better. For example, if it's I don't know, maybe something like a movie studio or a 3D animation studio, and then that logo design would want to use some form of lighting or shading in the logo itself, then 3D logo designs are the right approach to move forward with. Isometric designs are the ones that would sort of be a middle ground between flat logo and 3D logo. Like it won't have too many three-dimensional details like shadows or lighting like 3D logo would have. However, it would not look extremely two-dimensional like flat logo designs would look. So isometric designs are, it will have a perspective view, so there is a bit of a dimension there, but excluding the gradients, the lightings, and the shadows that a 3D logo design would have. So it's like a middle ground between flat and 3D logo designs, which in fact is quite popular these days also. Last but not the least, some of the most predominant industries in our culture today use typographical designs. So typographical logo designs are where you're using text as a logo itself. So it could be, in fact, even with a graphical logo design, you would still want to have a formal font style for your brand, which is the typographical logo design. Okay, so you could quickly use these keywords to search on Google search and see how the different logo designs look. For this instance, let me quickly switch here and I'll just say flat logo designs. And if I do that, you will notice that there are some bunch of options where you can see there's this two-dimensional looking logo designs. For example, here in this blue fonts, it's just two circle, which has some form of uh, overlay color transposition happening between each other. Um, and that's still considered as a flat logo design. One of the most iconic one, I think, is the logo of Apple, which is a flat apple, slightly bitten in the corner. So something like that would be flat logo designs. So logo of Nike, Apple are all very popular, common examples of a flat logo design where there is no shadings or the concept of depth being illustrated. It's a plain two-dimensional shape. If I check out 3D logo designs here, you realize that as soon as I say 3D, of course, it adds the concept of adding a bit of shadows, right? Or concept of depth into the logo. So that's converting a logo into 3D. Again, let me show isometric. And in case of isometric logo designs, you would see something that's puts forth the concept of perspective. And here's the same Apple logo re-envisioned as an isometric concept. So yeah, in this case, you have a slight bit of a angular perspective towards object, which is no longer shown in just two dimension. So these are the most common types of logo designs. And again, typographic logo designs are plenty. I think FedEx, Coca-Cola, Microsoft are some of the common examples of using text as a logo design itself. So again, before you begin the logo design process, it's a good idea to sketch out or to at least qualify one of these approaches as the approach for your logo or your brand. Now I'll get to the using the Illustrator for creating some basic logo designs. So one of the most simple approach to using creating logo design, I'll go through a bunch of approaches here, is let's say using text. So if I use a text, I'll just use a word called sharp for now. Okay, so I'll imagine that sharp is the brand name for our organization or the application. So if that's the word, I'll first take some time or take my time to pick a reasonable font. So for example, I'll pick next are bold for now. So imagine this is the font style. Now anybody could make this logo design by just typing that, right? So if I say, okay, that's the logo, not much of any effort, but you would want to give some level of customization to the logo, right? So in that case, if you want to make further customization to this text, one of the first thing to do in Illustrator is to expand the shape. Now what expanding does is converts this otherwise type-based object into a path-based object. So to do so, you select the text, go to object in the menu bar, and then you click expand. Once you do so, you'll realize that you get a pop-up object and fill. Now you can decide to just expand the object or the fill. For the sake of simplicity, I'll just leave both of them checked and then I'll say OK. Now as soon as you hit OK here, what you would have gained is that you now have the ability to manipulate these letters because they are path based. You can change the formation or the shape of each individual letters. That is what you have gained. What you have lost, however, is you can no longer edit this text as if it was a type or a text, meaning that if I had a spelling mistake here, if I want to add another letter in between, no, you cannot just type over it because this has been converted into a path. So even with the text tool or the type tool, as you can see here, the tool does not activate. It's no longer a text, it is a path-based object. And the benefit of that now is that you can now make custom modifications. So for example, with the direct selection tool, that's the shortcut is A on the keyboard. If I say direct selection tool, I can now select individual shape points. And if I click here, as you can see, I could just change the shape itself, right? So if I have that feature, I can now add several customizations. Maybe I change the letter H into a bit more of a is as such, right? So just selecting a vertex point, using arrow keys to change the orientation. So now I'm just trying to make it look pointy to illustrate the concept of sharp, right? So it's the same thing for letter A, I'm just clicking there and I'm making it sharp. So as you can see, it's just getting a cut like that, okay? So that's very easy. You can select any particular vertex point and manipulate the vertex point as needed. Control Z again. So now next part, if I want to get a cut over here, let's say, I can use the pen tool. With the pen tool, I'm just drawing a random shape here. I'll just draw, let's say, something like that. And now I'll just, for the sake of illustration, I'll just change the color of this black triangle into the white color. So I'm changing the fill color to white. So see, my goal is to say, let's cut this text like that. Now, right now it looks as if the job is done, but if we had a non-white background, let me show that to you. If we had a non-white background, you would actually realize that the text actually has a white triangle. Now, remember in the start of this tutorial, I mentioned that you don't need layers. And right now I've just created a new object which sort of covers all the other objects that I had previously created. If I was in Photoshop, I would have just gone to layers panel and rearranged the order of this object so that the text and the triangle could now be seen. However, because we are not using layers in Illustrator, you could simply achieve the same result using using object ordering. So I'll simply right click and you can see there's an option called arrange, and this allows you to reorder the Z index of the objects. What I mean by that is now I can say send to back, and then the rectangle goes behind. The text and the triangle from before are now upwards, hence we can see it. But see, notice that I can see the triangle. When I was actually trying to make this logo, my assumption would have been I no longer want to see this triangle. Instead, I would like to see the sky blue background, provided the text was cut with the triangle, right? So in that sense, there is a very useful tool in Illustrator, which is called the Pathfinder tool. So if you go to Window and select Pathfinder, as you can see here, you will get access to this particular panel. This panel has several options which allows multi-object interaction. So for example, I have two circles. I want to fuse the two circles together and create a new object. Then that can be done by unite or merge. If you want to create a new shape out of an intersection between two shapes, then you can use intersection. Let me in fact demonstrate it instead of just verbally describing it. So imagine I had ellipse tool, I'm trying new circle here, and I'll create a copy of this circle using Alt as the duplicate. Now see, there are two objects here. If I were to select both the object, and in the Pathfinder, if I would say intersect, notice I would just get the intersecting portion. So this Pathfinder tool is extremely useful whenever you are trying to work with multiple objects that are overlapping with each other. And you can create very unique looking shapes by simply playing around with the Pathfinder intersecting options. So for this part, I want this arrow, this straight triangle shape to cut out from this sharp text. And for that, I'm just going to use this minus front option. Now, if you see, notice here, as I did minus front, because the entire collection of the text was one layer, the resultant output is just the letter S. So this is not according to my intention. So I'm going to do Control Z. So to solve this problem, I could first unite this first, just the text layers, we could sort of unite them together. And then I'll retry doing the same thing. If that does not work, we're going to then use, the same technique, but we're going to use it one letter at a time. Okay. All right, so I'm going to do Control X, that is cut the shape. I'm clicking on this path and then I'm double clicking. That way I go to the overall collection of the shape. I'll press Control Shift and V, which is shortcut to paste in place, meaning that paste the object exactly where it was before. And then we are going to select each object at a time. Now I'm going to copy this just for the sake of it. So I'll select this shape, select the letter S minus front. When I do that, shape disappears, letter S has the cut. Control Shift V, I'm pasting it back again, clicking on the letter H minus front, Control Shift V, I'm just doing the same thing multiple times. Please mind you, you could also merge all the four letters at once and then do this in a single shot. But just so you understand that because the letters were formed, you can do it one letter at a time also. So now as you can see, the final output no longer has the triangle. We have literally cut out the letter, right? So now even if this rectangle was of any other background, we could now use any other background. The cutout is transparent. So that means that logo design would work on any given background. With that said, you can save this document as a PNG and as an AI or something. So this right here is a simple example of using text or type and creating a typographical logo design. To save this work, you would have to go to File, Export, and you can pick a style that you want, JPEG, that would convert this into a raster image and save it as a raster image. For a purely vector file type, I would recommend you either save it as a EPS. If you go to Save As, you'll get an option called EPS. So that would be more vector, like what is purely vector file format. So you'd have three options. If you save it as a .ai file, that is a source file. Only Adobe Illustrator can open it, or some other vector editing softwares like Inkscape can open it. If you save it as a PDF, a browser can also open it and it will be fully scalable. It won't pixelate because it's still vector. You can have it as SVG or EPS. Okay. Now the most common use format is either SVG or PDF. You can pick either of these two file formats to save this logo design as a purely vector image. Purely vector image meaning that it would not pixelate no matter how much you zoom in or zoom out. If you're doing this as part of your coursework, I would recommend you save both file formats. One is the AI file, which is the source file, and another one is either PDF or EPS. So again, if you want to save this as a raster image, you go to File, Export, pick the file type, PNG, JPEG, whatever, right? If you want to save it as a vector file, instead of going to File, Export, you are going to go to File, Save As, and then find the appropriate type. So again, EPS or PDF or SVG. Any one of these three would be quite okay for common use. If you are going to use it for web, SVG I think is the better choice. All right, so that's how you would save this work, and that is the lesson for creating a typographical logo design. Let me switch gears by going to more graphical logo design. Now I'll show you a very simple exercise for creating a graphical logo design which uses the concept